I'm going to be working on my mental process and my mental program today, and I'm going to share with you kind of more in-depth details as to what it is and how to establish a mental program or a shot routine that you stick to. Yeah, like I said, I'm decided I'm going to take advantage of this weather. I'm going to shoot here at Blank Bale, but instead of just boring you with shooting here at Blank Bale and, showing you what I'm doing, basically shooting nothing, I figured I would talk about a mental program because I've had a lot of people asking about that because the last video that was, done about training, I talked specifically about working on my mental process to integrate better the grip sear action into the process because it's a slightly different focus than the click on a recurve. So in short, what a mental program is something you do every single time you shoot to make sure that you have more consistent results. So the whole idea is if you do the same thing physically, the same anchor, the same string alignment, the same bow position, the same finger pressure, all of those things that we know matter in results downrange, if we do those things consistently, we'll have tighter groups downrange than if we didn't do it consistently, right? That's the whole point of being consistent. But take it to the next step. If you are also thinking about the same thing every time you're doing the same thing physically, then you probably will have even tighter groups downrange, or at least even more consistent groups from day to day to day, or from venue to venue, or in different conditions, such as like adverse weather conditions when it's windy or rainy, or excessively hot, or potentially when you're under pressure shooting for, that backyard world championship or an Olympic gold medal. It's always the same thing over and over and over. And that's the whole point of a mental process, a mental program, or a shot cycle that you can stay focused on to help make you a better archer. So that's what I'm going to be working on today, just kind of ingraining that. And I'm going to share with you a great starting point for a mental process or a mental program. And then I'll share with you how mine has evolved over the years and what I'm actually focusing on today here with my barebow. So I'm just going to shoot a couple of arrows here and then get into explaining to you what a mental process is. But you'll see that every single time I go to shoot my shot, not only do I do the same thing physically, if you could see inside my brain, when I look at the target before I lift my bow, I have a moment of kind of quiet and stillness, and that's when I'm starting to work on getting that mental process, that mental program going. So I'm going to shoot, and you'll see before each shot, I take just a moment to calm myself and then go. So instead of boring you with 7 arrows, I'm just going to do those 3 and talk to you about what a good starting point is for a mental program or a mental process or a shot cycle. It is literally built into Coach Lee's KSL shot cycle. It is literally that. That is a good starting point to think of the same thing over and over and over again. So a very rudimentary, basic level mental process is, okay, hook. I set my crawl first because it's barebow. Hook, grip, this is set position, setup, loading anchor transfer, expansion, release, and follow through. But more importantly, those parts that are most important to think about are the critical moments when at full draw. You must get to the point of where you transfer, you calm down, you've committed to finishing the shot, and then you focus on a given thing to get to the finish, and that means how you are moving. The places that you're moving, the tension that you feel in certain places, those type of things. That is built into the system. That is a mental process or a mental program. It's a great starting point to think about over and over and over again. But as you start to progress, as you become more of a mature archer as far as having your own things that you're working on thinking about, or noticing, like, for example, say you have a tendency to have your timing go a little bit long. And for me, when my timing goes a little bit long, or meaning how long I'm at full draw, it takes too long to get the shot off, specifically with a recurve and a clicker, or even a compound and a release sometimes. What I found is that it is directly related most often to my bow shoulder. The secondary would be how much I am like loading the bow, how much I am committing to getting engaged with my back, how aggressive I am, meaning not being too careful as I'm drawing the bow back. And as long as I hit those marks, my timing will be consistent. So what I do in my shot cycle, if I notice I'm having some issues there, or when I was having issues there, I will, do the whole thing. I set my hook and grip and go into set, and then I'll go into setup. But at setup, I will reach extra hard to the target to set the shoulder nice and strong and low. And when I draw the bow back and hit that load position, I'm going to be aggressive with it and really commit to engaging my back. So I'll do this really quick. When I'm looking at the target and I have this moment of stillness, I'm thinking about be aggressive with the reach and really commit to loading really strong with my back. And that's it. That's literally how it starts to evolve. And it continues to progress further and further. You eventually get to the point of where my goal is to think about 2 to 3 things maximum during the shot on any given day. So, I have a couple of foolproof things to start with. That reach with the shoulder, load aggressively, commit to transfer. That is kind of, in those 2 second things are almost the same thing to me. And then, finishing the shot is always primary of my focus point, and finishing very strong. So I will always go through that routine inside my head really quick as I'm staring at the target, just kind of feeling what it feels to reach really far and what it feels to finish very strong. Those are things that I think about literally every single shot. Every single time before I pull back the bow, I think about it. When at full draw, those are the things I'm actually thinking about every single time, and staying focused on those things. And after the shot goes, I quick check in to see how it went, and if I need to make adjustments, I will make adjustments before doing that all over again. That is a shot cycle, that is a shot routine, and that's how I use it in my experience. So a moment for stillness. And really just finish strong. That's all I focus on every single time. Now, what separates the best from the rest are when you need to make adjustments on the fly. There are times when, for whatever reason, it could be jet lag, could be sleeping on a new unknown bed, could be a pillow that you didn't bring from home because you forgot it, or whatever it is. As you're traveling, you start to deal with different things that you normally don't deal with at home. So certain tensions, certain wear, pain, or just being tired and fatigued. And so it's your job as a top level competitor to figure out what's going to make that day tick. What is going to make the difference in having a stellar day versus having a day that was just, wasn't quite there, and I had definitely some room for improvement. And that is difficult. Sometimes you find it on arrow number 1 at practice. Sometimes you don't find it till the very end, and sometimes you don't find it at all, and it ends up being a little bit frustrating from time to time because, sometimes you just can't figure it out, and there's so many factors, so many things can change, and the smallest little things can make a difference. If you've done your job in preparation before the event and actually really trained your butt off and prepared as much as you could, the way that you falter, how much you're off your game, will be much less than as if you weren't prepared and weren't ready for the event. And that does fall back on your mental process, your mental program, your mental training, working on doing the same thing over and over and over again to make sure that you have more of a consistent result downrange and more consistent from day to day. And so what I will work on as I'm shooting some days is to think about, like specifically because I'm working on this grip sear to make sure it's good to go, is I will make sure that I really try to figure out how I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, or what I'm saying to myself, and how that affects the actual shot. And if it feels like it's more consistent, then I'll stick with that for a little while, and then maybe tweak it slightly when I know I've got it down pat. Really just trying to hammer in the same thing. Now, what you think about while at full draw is important, and it varies between people. So I'm going to explain to you 2 different ways that you can start working on, so that way you can kind of start to assemble a mental process or a mental program. So the first style of mental programming, mental process, or a shot cycle would be a word-based shot cycle or a word-based mental program. That would mean when you say a word, it means something to you. So when I tell you a word of, say, a purple pony, you're going to think of a purple pony. If I tell you to say, think about how you hook your fingers on the string, you should be able to think about how you exactly place your fingers on the string, or the feel of your fingers at full draw. If I tell you to pull the string, what do you think about? Pulling the string. So words mean something, and words mean something to everybody. So when you use words properly, you'll think about the right things, hopefully, especially if you're familiar with what you're talking about. Now, if it's an unlearned technique or an unlearned style, words don't mean anything, and you have to apply them as you know them. And as you do that, that will help control your brain, your thought process, your mental program, or your shot cycle. That is a great way to start. That is definitely a way that I always recommend it to people that who have never really had a shot cycle integrated, or never really worked on the mental process or the mental program. Always start with words, because words always mean something. Now, what you can think about, once you get a lot more comfortable with a mental program and get used to, that extra workload inside your head, is to then start thinking about feelings. What does the shot feel like? Not necessarily if you're happy or sad, but how does the actual body feel while at full draw? What are you actually going for to make the actual shot happen? For example, how my front bow shoulder feels is important to me, because that's what I use as a reference. Just saying reach or just saying strong bow shoulder isn't enough for me, and what I really like to do is to feel the actual engagement of the muscles, to feel the structure, the stability, or whatever it is. That is really important to me to use for my mental process. My mental program is a feeling-based thing. So when I go through the process inside my head and when I'm at full draw, I'm purely focused on what I feel while at full draw. Now, this is more of an advanced thing, because if you don't know what you're supposed to be looking for, or you don't know how it actually feels from shot to shot to shot, how can you replicate it? How can you even think about it, right? And so you need to develop that after you've used the words, and then you can slowly start to focus on more and more feeling. And then as things progress even further down the road, you can start to think about more of the important critical parts of how it feels, and not necessarily every single step. Because yes, in the KSL shot cycle, there's anywhere from 8 to 11 steps depending on how you define them, and then from there each step has countless sub-steps and countless details of those other sub-steps, and so there's just too many things to think about. But once you get proficient, once you get comfortable, and once you do this time and time and time again, you'll find it narrows down to a few things. Again, like I said, 2 to 3 things. That's a really, really good starting point to try to narrow it down to once you become really consistent and proficient and comfortable with what you're doing. And yes, I literally think about this every time, even here at Blank Bale. At a target at 50 meters, doing this, with a recurve at 70 meters, a recurve at 18 meters, shooting a bunny, at 5 yards, way up a hill. A bunny, not a rabbit, a bunny meaning a field target. In any type of shooting environment, every single time I shoot, I'm thinking about it. Thinking about the same thing over and over and over again, doing the same thing physically over and over and over again. And even when I do a visualization process or a program, when I'm working on mentally visualizing what I'm doing, I will do the same thing there as well. I don't change it ever. It's never changes, it's always the same. There is never a time that I am not running the program, at least when things are going well. When things don't go well, that's when I don't have a program, that's when I don't have a process, and that's when I end up just kind of floundering and end up not really having a good direction. And it ends up being a little frustrating because I know that this makes a big difference. And that's why I've started this whole journey of let's get back to it, starting with the mental process and the mental programming, because I know that is the key, and I know that this is what's going to make the difference.